She thought it was just another quiet evening at home, a place she had earned, in a community where she paid the same dues as everyone else. But to her homeowners association, she didn't belong. One call, one accusation, and suddenly armed. Officers were heading straight for her door. What they didn't know was that the woman they targeted was no ordinary resident. The moment she opened that door, their assumptions would shatter, and so would the illusion of fairness in this neighborhood. How did a simple property dispute turn into a chilling lesson about race, power, and justice? Her name was Denise Walker, a woman who had built her life on discipline, integrity, and an unshakable sense of service. By day, she carried the weight of a badge, the person entire communities turned to in moments of danger. But at home, she was simply a homeowner, tending her small garden, waving to neighbors, and trying to carve out peace in a world that too often refused it. To most, Denise's house was just another neat brick home in a suburban row. To her, it was evidence of years of sacrifice, overtime shifts, and dreams realized. Yet behind the neat lawns and trimmed hedges, not everyone saw her as an equal neighbor. Whispers of not fitting in circulated. Emails from the Homeowners Association arrived with a sharper tone than anyone else's. And though Denise ignored the slights at first, a quiet tension had been building, waiting for the day it would boil over. That day was coming, faster than she realized. Denise had noticed the shift weeks earlier. A letter tucked into her mailbox with a tone dripping in condescension. "Your lawn violates community standards." Another note about the size of her porch light, written as if she were an unruly tenant, instead of a respected member of law enforcement. She shrugged them off at first. After all, she had faced bigger battles in life. But the complaints kept coming, each one more nitpicky than the last. Scraps of paper dressed up as rules, all aimed at her. Soon whispers turned into pointed stares. The same neighbors she waved to stopped meeting her eyes. It wasn't about the lawn, and everyone knew it. Denise, a black woman in a mostly white neighborhood, was suddenly out of place. The Homeowners Association had labeled her a problem, and now they were looking for a way to prove it. Then came the night everything snapped. She had just returned home from a long shift, her uniform still draped across the back seat of her car. Headlights swept across her driveway as another neighbor slowed down, lingering longer than anyone should. Minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. Blue and red lights exploded against her windows, flashing across her living room walls like an uninvited warning. The HOA hadn't just sent another letter. They had called the police. Denise's heart raced, not out of fear for what she had done, but for what could happen when assumptions collided with authority. She knew how calls like this too often ended for people who looked like her. She was about to walk outside into a scene she'd witnessed countless times in her career. Only this time, she was the target. As officers approached with hands inching toward their holsters, neighborhood curtains twitched open. Some residents watched with smug satisfaction, others with silent unease. Denise stood at the door, every second stretching heavy and long. Should she reveal herself immediately? Should she let them speak first? The wrong choice could flip control in an instant. What the officers didn't realize was that this suspicious homeowner was their own county sheriff, the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the county. But before she could reveal the truth, she had to survive the moment, knowing that even with years of authority and a badge to her name, her life could still be reduced to a dangerous misunderstanding. And as she gripped the doorknob, ready to step outside, one question burned in her mind. Would her title be enough to protect her, or would her skin color decide her fate first? The night air felt razor-thin as Denise opened the door. The piercing flash of red and blue washed over her face, painting her living room behind her in fractured colors. Two officers stood rigid at the curb, hands tight near their weapons, eyes fixed on her as though she were a threat in her own home. "Step outside, ma'am," one barked, voice clipped, rehearsed. Neighbors gathered at windows and porches, watching, whispering, the quiet theater of suspicion. Denise could feel the weight of a dozen invisible judgments pressing down, every ounce of her identity scrutinized. It wasn't her garden. It wasn't her porch light. It was her skin. And tonight, that was all they saw. Her pulse thundered. She knew this moment could unravel in seconds, the same kind she'd investigated too many times before. Any sudden move, a misplaced gesture, could stamp her name into headlines. Ironically, she had trained officers on this exact scenario, yet here she was, the lesson itself. Then she straightened her shoulders, stepping into the glow of the cruiser's lights. Calm, commanding, as if she were the one conducting the stop, because she was. Her voice, even and unshaken, cut through the tension. "I am Sheriff Denise Walker." The officers froze. Confusion flickered across their faces. One faltered, lowering his hand. The other stammered, caught between disbelief and dawning realization. The crowd fell silent. The HOA's accusation, the suspicion, the escalation, it all shattered in that instant. The woman they had treated like an intruder was, in fact, the highest authority in the county. But the sting remained. Because even as their posture softened, Denise knew. The danger hadn't been erased by her badge. It had merely been delayed by it. Power had protected her this time. But what about those without it? And as Denise met the officer's stunned eyes, one unshakable thought blazed in her mind. What if she hadn't been the sheriff? The officers left that night quietly, their authority crumbling under the realization of who Denise truly was. No apology could undo the humiliation she felt, standing in her own doorway like a suspect on trial. Her neighbors dispersed back into the shadows of their porches, but the silence that lingered spoke louder than any words. Denise closed her door, but she knew this wasn't over. The sting of being reduced to nothing more than suspicion in her own community cut deeper than any single confrontation. For Denise, the uniform had shielded her in that moment. But the truth gnawed at her. If she hadn't carried the title of sheriff, the outcome could have been very different. She thought of every name she'd read in reports, every case that ended before it should have, every life that never got the chance to say, "I belong here." This was more than one incident. It was a mirror reflecting how quickly bias can turn neighbor into accuser, community into danger. Denise's story is unique in its irony, but not in its pattern. Across the country, countless black men and women live this reality without a badge to soften the blow, and that is the chilling question her story leaves behind. If authority is the only protection against injustice, what happens to those who have none? Because this wasn't just a clash with a homeowners association. It was a reminder, uncomfortable, undeniable, that racism doesn't vanish with status or success. It waits at the doorstep, demanding to be confronted. So the next time we see a story like this, the question isn't if it will happen again. The question is, what will we do about it?